Hello, welcome to our remote sensing group presentation. My name is Jad, and with me are Sorin and Harminder. Today we will be presenting the journal article titled Detecting Post-Fire Salvage Logging from Landsat Change Maps and National Fire Service Data. The Canadian boreal forest is one of the most extensive ecosystems on Earth, and management of the forest ecosystems is important. The boreal is important because economically it provides opportunities via environmental goods and services, environmentally because it plays a large role in the carbon cycle via storage and carbon sinks, and ecologically because a wide range of species live within it. So why are forest fires important? The boreal forest is one of the few ecosystems that are shaped by natural processes, with wildfires being the primary disturbance. Over 2 million hectares are burned annually, with some years exceeding 7 million. A common industrial practice is post-fire logging, also known as salvage harvesting. Salvage harvesting has been increasingly used to minimize economic loss with little to no consideration of forest management. However, the consequences of sequential disturbances are poorly understood, and we don't really know the impacts. Figure 1 gives a visual of what salvage harvesting looks like. Moving on to remote sensing applications, to accurately manage and understand the impacts of sequential disturbances, integrating the location and time of salvage operations and fire disturbances are required. Satellite remote sensing is an effective tool for monitoring forest change as it offers multispectral, geospatial, and temporal analysis. Classification and change detection allows for the possibility to detect both disturbances. However, detection of these multiple disturbances is a challenging task as it imposes spectral confusion. The initial disturbance diminishes the canopy reflectance data to a point where it's difficult to spectrally separate from the second disturbance even with a high degree of user interface. Figure 1b shows how these confusions arise. The closer they are together and the more sequential both disturbances are, the harder it is to distinguish between each one. The objective of this paper is to use post-classification to detect fire disturbances and salvage logging. The paper evaluates the accuracy of the post-fire logging detection and compares the results with salvage statistics.
So moving on to the study area. The study area was focused on the Boreal Plains ecozone of central Saskatchewan. It represented a 185 by 185 kilometer area of a Landsat image, as shown on the figure. The soils contained in the area are dark gray luvisoil soils that can sustain a wide array of tree species and is usually used in agriculture. The well-drained sites are typically occupied by trembling aspen and white spruce, whereas jack pine and black spruce often dominate the dry sites. They acquired 16 images from Landsat 5 and 7 between 1986 and 2008. So prior to classification, these images were pre-processed. Firstly, the images were orthorectified and converted into surface reflectances. Second, to minimize the impact of the sun and sensor view angle effects, the images were normalized to a common reference scene, usually stable areas of reflectances. Areas of cloud and shadows were masked and then filled in using a interpolation method to the nearest clear observation, so that there were no empty gaps in the data. After pre-processing, the images were classified into categories using a RGB color composite change detection approach. So this change detection method projected different dates of imagery through the red, green, and blue color channels so that major changes in the forest cover would appear as unique shades of RGB. Band 5 was used as the shortwave infrared region, as this is useful for detecting forest disturbances, where burned and clear cut sites reflect usually really high in the shortwave infrared spectrum than compared to healthy vegetation as shown in the figure. Overall, the forest disturbance map had high accuracy, although small portions of the map had error due to mislabeling, where sites had undergone multiple disturbances that had similar spectral signatures. Since band 5 reflectance is sensitive to forest structure, shadowing, and canopy moisture, different amounts of forest removal resulted in differential changes in the spectral signatures. To identify areas which had been burned by wildfires, they used the Canadian Large Fire Database. It contained data on wildfires greater than 200 hectares, which have occurred in Canada since 1980 and 2006. The information included fire ignition dates and causes, the burned area, as well as spatial locations in the form of point and polygon GIS files. Areas of post-fire logging were identified by spatially subtracting the wildfire map from the clear-cut map, which were the images shown in the previous slide. The majority of the post-fire logging occurs within the first few years after the fire, as shown in the figure. Due to this, they use clear-cut areas disturbed between 0 and 5 years after the fire as the post-fire logging class. To test for accuracy in detecting post-fire logging, 300 sample points were randomly distributed, and they were assessed using Landsat time series and air photos from Google Earth. The error matrix contained 4 classes, which included 1. Areas mapped as post-fire logging, areas inside fire perimeters which were not identified in the post-fire logging, areas of mapped clear cuts which fall outside the fire perimeters, and lastly, areas with no mapped burning or clear cutting. The error matrix was used to calculate the overall accuracy and Cohen's kappa, which takes into account the expected agreement due to random chance. The producer's accuracy measures how well the reference sample points were classified, whereas the user's accuracy measures how well the map represents the actual conditions on the ground.
Now we're going to move on to the results part of the presentation. We have the Landsat imagery displayed in a false color format using the bands 432. So we have figure 6 showing examples of post-fire logging detected with the presented GIS modeling approach. In the left column, we have immediately after the fire, burn vegetation, which is shown in green, while unburned areas are displayed in various shades of red. In the center column, we have post-burn imagery showing clear cuts as bright cyan, while non-harvested burned areas in lighter shades of red, green, and cyan. And lastly, in the right column, we have post-fire logging map, correctly capturing the areas inside the perimeter which appear most impacted by clear cutting. We have approximately 4,148 hectares of forest potentially disturbed by post-fire logging between 1987 and 2008. In figure 7, we see fire events occurring episodically, of course. The largest event happened in 1987 and 1995, if you're looking at the black line. We also have post-fire logging mirroring the pattern of fire occurrence within a 2-year lag. And also to be noted, there's gaps in the Landsat time series data for 1998, 1992, 96, 2000, 2003, and 2005. Non-salvage clear cutting stays relative to time, and also looking at the percentages on the left axis, the rates represent the yearly percentage of each category's total disturbance. For example, 38% of all study periods fire occurs in 1995. Table 2 is showing weighted error matrix that was used to assess the accuracy of the post-fire logging map. The results are shown as area percentage with sample points count in parentheses. Bold numbers indicate where map and reference data are in agreement. So from this slide, the takeaway is that the user accuracy of the post-fire logging map was 68%, and according to Landis and Koch in 1977, the kappa value of 0.82 indicates a substantial level of agreement between the map and the reference data. The reliability of post-fire logging detection by mapped estimates of clear-cut areas in hectares has been compared to the statistics reported for the Prince Albert Forest Management Agreement (PAFMA) of provincial salvage volume cubic meter between 1999 and 2008. The two datasets display comparable temporal patterns of disturbance, including similar peaks of post-fire salvage logging in 2003-2004 and no activity detected between 2005 and 2008. Significant linear relationship between the two datasets determined by the Pearson's correlation coefficient is shown, where R is 0.997 while P is smaller than 0.001. The research experiment presented in this paper used a data integration approach to locate potential areas of post-fire logging in boreal forests in Canada. Recent advancements in the Landsat time series change detection has made possible the spectral separation of clear-cut harvests from other types of forest disturbances. The study has found that 92% of the pixels classified as fire in the Landsat disturbance map fell within the fire perimeter boundaries. This shows that the fire perimeters are successfully capturing most of the fire locations which are likely to be salvaged. While broad-scale patterns of disturbance are useful, the real value of the approach presented in this paper lies in the ability to pinpoint stand-level salvage cuts for more detailed monitoring. Lastly, given the differences in forest carbon loss and successional recovery after burning and salvage logging, see Figure 3, the additional monitoring capacity provided by Landsat will allow forest managers to better quantify the impacts of these disturbances at both stand and landscape scale. For future studies, Landsat disturbance maps could be used to quantify the proportion of unburned islands and other non-flammable land features, like recent clear-cuts, water, and urban, leading to more accurate estimates of carbon flux from burn perimeter boundaries. There could be strong potential for expanding the presented method to other forested areas which have the necessary input raster datasets. The broader scale use of this method will depend on the development and accessibility of forest clear-cutting maps. Given the unique temporal response of Landsat SWIR, shortwave infrared, reflectance to full, represented by clear cuts, and partial, represented by fires, canopy disturbances, and the emergence of automated techniques for processing and classifying large volumes of Landsat data, the authors of this article are confident that historical forest disturbance maps, which attribute full from partial canopy removal, will become increasingly available.